Hello everybody, welcome back to the channel. My name's Nick, and in today's video I want to show you guys the cups that we use to feed our crested geckos. And I'll kind of talk about from baby stage up until adult stage and adulthood, and even if you cohab or you have breeding pairs together for the breeding season, I'll show you what we used to use for that and then kind of how we go about it now. So let's jump right into it. Alright, so the first feeding cup size that we use, this is for like hatchlings, and honestly up to like, really like, 10 grams or so. And honestly, you can get away with it for a lot longer than that, but it's this little, there you go. It's this little cup right here. I don't know how much it holds or anything like that. It's just a water bottle cap is what we use, but it's a specific like brand of water bottles that we get. I think it's like an off-brand. So it has a smaller cap. But what this is perfect for is for the smaller geckos. You can barely fill up the inside of this, and it still will fill up the bottom of it, but it doesn't take as much to fill up the bottom of it, so you don't use as much food. And they really like, a lot of our geckos, I put in maybe like the center dot and just kind of fill it, and it spreads to make like a really thin layer. Most of our geckos won't even eat all of that in a week, so having this, or not in a week, at a feeding time, so having this is honestly really cool, and they're good little ones to have around, especially for the little gecko. Now the next one that we use is just a normal bottle cap like this. It's a little bit deeper. Now I will use this honestly for some of our adult males. I'll fill this up for them, but we do feed every 3 days, so whenever you're feeding every 3 days, you don't have to fill up as much. Now the sizes I'm going to get into after this, I'll kind of talk about when I use them and when I don't. But typically for some of our adult males, this will get the job done. If I do find that they've cleaned it out completely, then I will upsize them for maybe the next 3 or 4 feedings. But we've been able to maintain our geckos' weights. Some of them have gained weight, using this system, so I know it works, and that's why I'm telling you about it. So this little bottle cap right here, I'll fill it up all the way if it's an adult. I will use this for like 5 to 10 gram, or sorry, 10 gram, 15, 20 gram, and I filled up about the whole inner ring and maybe up to like, the second like little line where it twists into the water bottle, if that makes any sense. So once again, it's a good gauge to use, for your geckos, and you just have to be smart and know your geckos and know which ones aren't going to eat a ton, but yet still are a healthy weight, and which ones clean their bowl no matter what. And then you just kind of have to gauge it from there. Like if you have an overweight female, something like this may not be the worst thing in the world for her to slowly lose weight over time, but still eating. So it's just something to consider. Now this right here, this is a Coke Zero bottle cap, so it's a lot deeper than the other bottle cap. And the reason I like this bottle cap is I found that like even my biggest eaters typically won't clean out this whole cap. Like a lot of our breeder females, if I leave it in there for 3 days, it's usually just enough left at the bottom to where I know that they ate a lot. I know that they ate enough without needing more, if that makes any sense. So like ideally, the whole goal, guys, is if you fill up the food, you want like just a little bit remaining, right? Because then that tells me as a keeper, I fed plenty to them, they got full, and I still had a little bit left over, so I don't have to spend as much money on food all the time, which, if you have a lot of geckos, then it can add up, but it's really not too expensive. It's just more about being efficient and not wasting food. So feeding out of a smaller bowl is a huge pro tip. And honestly, guys, if you look at like what the market sells, like they sell these huge food bowls and all this crazy stuff, the geckos won't eat that much. I mean, they just don't. Some behemoths do. Most of them will not. And honestly, if you really think about it from a business standpoint, if I make Crested Gecko diet, I want you to buy a ton of it. How do I make sure you buy a ton of it? I make you use big feeding bowls. That's just the way it is. We used to use big feeding bowls all the time. We ended up wasting a ton of it. Now I've kind of gotten to the point, like I said, where with a lot of our geckos who we've had for, almost 2.5 years now, I really understand their feeding schedules, and I understand how much they're going to eat at any given time. And now with knowing geckos, this is where it kind of comes into next. Also, just on a side note, I use this for all of our gargoyles, and I use this for all of our grow-up leechies that we have. Okay, so now what I want to move into is Gatorade caps, okay? So Gatorade caps, they come in a lot of variations in size. Some of them are really like, some of them are super long, but not as deep as these. It kind of holds about the same amount, I think. I really like the deep ones. I use this for all of our adult leechies, well, our 2 adult leechies. It's hit and miss. Every other time I find this completely cleaned, and then the next time I go in there and I fill it up completely, it's not as cleaned. It's kind of figuring out, you know, what they eat, when they eat, kind of learning your gecko's, you know, any gecko's pattern. But we have, I have 2 females who are notorious for not eating until they're starting to produce eggs. Now, what I mean by that is, when we're in season and we're breeding, this specific gecko, she will eat a ton, bulk up, lay her eggs, get super slim, but then she will kind of go off food for a little bit, and then I can tell when she starts making eggs again because she starts eating more. So instead of using this small cap, because whenever she decides that she's ready to eat, she crushes food. Like, it's crazy. So what I do, and what I've had to like kind of learn to do, is I give her pretty much every single time now, I give her a big cup full, because I don't want to miss an opportunity for her eating. It's just one of these weird things that I'm trying to figure out, because if all my geckos are kept at the same temperatures and the same settings and everything like that, then how come this one gecko isn't eating the same as the others are? We actually have 2 that are like this, but it's my females who produce. I don't know if it has something to do with eggs. It's just in my mind, when she lays, she looks thin, and then she starts crushing food right before she lays again, and she gets really bulky. So I usually just fill this up, I offer it to her. If I just find eggs in her bin, then I might give her one of these for like the next week, because I know that she's not gonna eat. Sometimes she surprises me, but most of the time she doesn't. So I give her a big cup, and I have found that since I started giving her the big cup more often, she's done a better job at retaining weight and actually putting on weight when she needs to. So there's something to be said about really learning each individual gecko and feeding according to that plan. This is just kind of a size guidance that I used and have used that's really worked for me, and it's taken a lot of different cup sizes. It's taken a lot of time trying to learn them, and even I'm sure once the winter rolls around, we might end up, if a lot of our females end up cooling down and not eating as much, same thing with our males usually won't do that as bad, but some of our females, once the season's over and she's done laying, she doesn't eat as much because she doesn't really need to eat as much because she's not making eggs all the time. So I might downsize the cup then, but typically it kind of works out okay. Alright guys, so the last one I want to talk about is this big food cup here, okay? Now this big food cup here is what I will be using once we introduce our lychees and they live together. I'm going to put 2 of these in there, and I'm probably going to fill them up all the way. Whenever we kept trios together, or even, so if I kept a trio of crested geckos together, which is 2 females and 1 male, I would use 2 of these, and I'd fill them about halfway. I believe these are 2-ounce cups, or 1.5 ounce cups, so I was feeding anywhere from 1 ounce to 1 ounce to 0.75 ounces. So that's what I was doing, and I found that with this, when I was cohabbing, it made it easier, and is part of the reason I quit cohabbing too, is I'm not home as much. I don't work from home, so I don't have as much time necessarily as someone who maybe does this full time to keep crested geckos together all the time. I don't feel as comfortable with it either anymore, so I just don't do it anymore. But when I did, this is what I used because it was easiest for me to fill it up and then kind of let it sit for 2 days and then replenish it. So that's the other thing too with cohabbing. I found that in order to keep everybody as healthy as possible, it was easiest to really fill this up and replace it every other day. I know some of you guys do every other day anyway. Around here we feed every 3 days. It's just, it works better for me, and I think it works better for the geckos. I've seen I've seen an increase in appetite, so I don't feel like I'm wasting as much food, but I feel like, once again, they're only leaving this much of the bowl left, so I feel like they're satisfied as well. But that's kind of everything. If I had a pair of geckos that were living together, a 1.1, I would fill this up about halfway. It's just, that's what I did, and I only did that for 1 season, guys, so I don't have a whole lot of like historical data on that necessarily, but it worked for that season. But then once we separated everybody into their own tubs, that's whenever we downsized the food cup size, just because they don't need that much. Before we go, I have one surprise for you guys. Alright guys, here's our 2 new surprise little guests now. This is Dolly, and this is Willa Dean. These are our 2 new Boston Terrier puppies. So, yeah, just want to show you guys we got 2 little puppies. They're 10 weeks old today, actually, but when you're watching this, they'll be 10 weeks and 1 day old. So that's going to wrap up this video, guys. I hope you enjoyed it. Comment down below other video ideas you want to see. I have a couple series planned now that I had a sinus infection for a while, but I'm feeling a lot better now, so we're going to start pumping out videos. But anyway, stay safe, stay positive, and comment some stuff down below, guys. See ya!